Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whenever you are. Thank you for watching my videos today. I'm going to be doing a debate actually with Peter. I'm just going to put myself over Anthony Pompliano's debate and basically debate Peter. And I'm doing this not to convince Peter the merits of Bitcoin, but more of to show us why we are in this thing. So then trying to convince somebody else. It's just a way of proving that Bitcoin is solid. And the reason why Peter is never going to understand why I believe Bitcoin and why all of us believe Bitcoin is going to be the next monetary system is because when you have everything you need in a monetary system, like for example, Peter is not refused a bank account. Peter is not refused investing in a particular asset. Peter is not refused to hold gold in another custody manner. I mean, these are things that happen to all of us, the average Joe, because we're not part of that elite group that allows certain individuals to have access to any kind of financial assets that they choose. So with that being said, let's start off with Peter's opening statements for supporting gold.
And first of all, if you're going to refer to me as a gold bug, we're going to have to call Anthony a Bitcoin bug. And that actually has a better ring to it anyway, right?
Bitcoin bug, gold bug.
All right, yeah.
Peter, 2 minutes, over to you.
And look, I have a lot of sympathy with the Bitcoin bugs, and their skepticism or their concerns about our fiat monetary system and the problems that it has. But rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, there already is a monetary alternative to fiat, and that is gold. And what the creator of Bitcoin tried to do, and other cryptos, is they're replicating a lot of the qualities that enabled gold to be a better form of money than other commodities that were also used as money. But the one key property that Bitcoin can't replicate is the properties that made gold a valuable commodity. Because before gold was money, it was a commodity. It was a very rare and highly desirable luxury good that has all sorts of uses. And it's those fundamental uses that give it its value. It's other properties that make it serve as money. And the reason it's a store of value is because the properties of gold don't decay over time. So whatever you can use gold for today, whether it's jewelry or aerospace or consumer electronics, if I store my gold for 100 years or 1,000 years, I can still use the gold for those purposes. Nothing will have changed over time. But the problem with Bitcoin and the idea that it can be a store of value is it has no value to store. There is nothing that you can use Bitcoin for. The value for Bitcoin is completely a function of the confidence that people have that they'll be able to give it to somebody else in the future at a higher price.
Well, that's interesting, Peter. I'd like to point out that a few things, right, in your opening arguments. One, you stated that we're reinventing the wheel. I would have to disagree. If you're unable to fly and you want to fly, right, and you invent, and people say it's impossible to fly, and they tell you it's impossible to fly, yet you create the ability to fly, that's not reinventing the mode of travel. that is inventing something completely new. And that is what Bitcoin is. It's something completely new that was never thought possible. And what's that, the completely new that's never thought possible, is being able to own an asset that you could transfer instantly to anyone else, anywhere around the world within a blink of an eye. That is something that was never thought possible. Now, this asset, of course, we can do that with any kind of digital asset. But what makes this Bitcoin's digital asset very unique is that it prevents other people from sending the same asset over and over again, thus making it useless, valueless, basically. The fact that it's rare gives it more value. You've also stated that people don't need this asset because We already have everything that we in gold and stuff like that. And you say that gold has its value from the fact that you could use it for something else. But the thing is, when we invent something, Peter, what you forget to realize is that when we invent something, it's something we use because we see value in it. Because what we have right now, what we're doing right now, is no good. And what we're doing right now is allowing banks to dictate what or who can have money, who can invest, who can transfer money anywhere in the world. This is not working for the rest of us. It's not working for me. It's not working for all the poor people that watch this video. And so we need to change. And we have a change. And that's why Bitcoin came into existence. Actually, Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin because he was mad that banks like yours got bailed out and the rest of us did not. And that's only possible through our current banking system, where you get to get out of jail free and the rest of us, we have to pay. I mean, how's that fair? So that's why we have this Bitcoin system, is because we need a new monetary system that is fair and allows us to transfer money anywhere in the world.
3 important things you can do to support this channel is click the like button, click the subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and also check out the description below where you'll find timestamps that take you to the relevant sections in this video, reference links to articles mentioned in the video, and links to my affiliates if you really want to help support the channel. You can even see all this cool stuff I provided on your mobile or tablet device.
Most of the people that I know, and I know a lot of people that own Bitcoin, I mean, they have pie-in-the-sky delusions about how high the price is going to go. And the main motivation is for the price to go up. They don't use it. They don't transact in it. They just hodl it. And they're hoping to get rich.
And what's your response to that?
Well, honestly, you know what? Because it's a new asset class, Bitcoin needs to get booted up. Basically, people, when we're trying to build a community of people, you have to educate people on what this is, because it's an asset that you sell to somebody, basically. And like all things you sell, right? You try to sell it on its merits. And so I'm trying to sell Bitcoin on the merits of, hey, you know what? This is a new monetary system which allows you to freely transact with somebody else. Not only transact, but build systems for helping people transact in this monetary system. You could build it without anybody saying, no, you can't build that. No. I mean, can we try going to a bank? Oh, man, Peter, I want to build some innovation on your bank. Do you think you would let me? Hell no. Right? So, I mean, the system allows us to build without anybody's permission on our current financial system, on our Bitcoin financial system, basically. And so we were selling those features, that anyone can have this. You don't have to be special. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be a billionaire to gain access to high finance anymore. And that is what we're trying to sell. That's what we've gathered here as Bitcoin community specialists to teach people about our new system, because there's a lot of new things that you need to do, because this is a completely different invention, and you have to be able to secure your private keys, and it's really difficult for most people to do so.
People not using Bitcoin and just hodling it and hoping to get rich.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of different things, right? The first is incorporates everything. So
but
it's
how much of it is just people buying and selling it to each other? And of course, some people can have multiple wallets and they could just be buying with their left hand and selling with their right hand, right? You don't know how much of the volume is legitimate two-party transactions that are arm's length, and how much of it is just people spoofing and just creating volume for the sake of creating the illusion that something's going on.
So yeah, I think that's true. There is a lot of probably a lot of let's call it a spade, manipulation going on in this market, but no, not as much as in the regular markets. The manipulation in the regular markets is out of this world, 1,000 times larger than what you see that's going on in Bitcoin. And if you're saying that's not happening, I mean, you could just search on the internet, okay, commodities manipulation, corn manipulation, gold manipulation, silver manipulation, the LIBOR manipulation. I mean, these things require massive amounts of money. And they're like completely manipulated to screw over the little guy. So to say that this side is manipulated, that Bitcoin is manipulated, yeah, it is. But to an extent, you can only do it so far, and same with the rest of the markets as well. You can only do it for so long, for so far before you get caught, or the whole thing comes to crashing down, which is what's going to happen with the dollar because it's just a big manipulation game.
Well, first of all, when gold was money, and gold was money before we had fiat, when people wanted to buy something small, like a cup of coffee, they didn't pay for it with gold. They would use another metal that was money. They might use copper. Right? Pennies were made out of copper or nickel. And so you could use other forms of money because other commodities can serve as money in addition to gold. In fact, in the United States, legally, we have a bimetallic system where both gold and silver were money, right? Copper and nickel were used as medium of exchange. They weren't legal tender, but people still bought things with pennies and with nickels. But yes, for some transactions, banks would store your gold, and then they would issue a currency backed by that gold, and then people would start exchanging the paper instead of the actual gold. The gold ownership would stay at a blacksmith or a bank, but what gave gold its value, or even copper or nickel or silver, is the things that you can do with those metals apart from use them as a medium of exchange or store of value. And the value that you are storing is all of the things that you can do with it. But with Bitcoin, there's nothing that you can do with it, so you're not storing any value. And to say that, well, people aren't using gold to buy a cup of coffee, they're not using gold now as a medium of exchange because everybody is using paper. But if a coffee merchant wanted to be paid in gold and a customer wanted to pay in gold, that's actually easy to do. I can do that easier than doing it with Bitcoin. It's a less expensive transaction. It happens faster and it happens quicker. So, using the technology, people in Bitcoin want to keep saying, hey, Peter, you don't look at technology. Well, with the technology that exists today, it's very easy to have your gold stored and then electronically transfer ownership of whatever quantity you want between two people. And so people can use gold as a medium of exchange, and they will use it again once confidence is really lost in the fiat system and you start to see a more rapid decline in the purchasing power of the dollar or the euro or the yen. Then you'll see the public demanding a more stable alternative, and they'll go back to gold.
Interesting, Peter. You've said a lot there in your statement there, and I want to get to it all, and I hope I do. The one point that I want you to notice is that you said when we were past tense on a gold standard. I think when we were on a gold standard, things were a lot better, and when we were on a bimetallic standard, things were better. But what is the actual problem with having these standards that we have? The problem is we have to trust a third party. And the reason why governments took over trusted the third party is because we found out that we couldn't trust a third party. We couldn't trust a bank to honor its agreement that, hey, you know what, for every one of these notes that I print, promising you the gold, then I'm going to actually have that gold in that vault. And if I do lend it out, I'm not going to lend out more than a certain percentage, like 50% or something like that, in order to ensure that I have enough gold to redeem should you come back on demand for that gold. Now, of course, governments took this over, and we found out that we can't even trust them either, because now they've taken away the gold from the backing of that note. So when you say, hey, you know what, it's easy to transact in gold, yeah, with our digital technology, and you could back it up, yeah, it's easy to do that now, and now it's even easier to take away that backing as well. And so, why should we put faith in a person when we can put faith in math? I think that's just absolutely silly to do so. Now, what you keep harping on is that Bitcoin is not used for anything. You keep forgetting that you could transfer it to somebody else, and you keep calling it the sucker. But no, if I sell somebody the use case of Bitcoin, which is, hey, you know what, you can receive wealth. And then restore that wealth, and because in the future it's going to go higher in value, because as more and more people are interested in buying this and using this product, it'll become more and more valuable because it's very limited. So you can I can hold the Bitcoin, I can save it, and then eventually it could go up higher in the future. Yes, that's true, and that's what we're selling. And we're not selling something that's absolutely nothing. We're selling something that's a utility like a cell phone, a car, or a computer. Basically, it's just a utility, and this is what the utility does. We can transfer it to somebody else. We can build different technologies on top of it as well, and so. Without anybody's telling us, hey, without asking for permission, without asking somebody, hey, can we build something here? No, these are all the features and benefits of Bitcoin, and that's what we're selling. So it's not nothing.
Bitcoin has the same thing, right? There's one Bitcoin. What is the US dollar exchange price, right? That's how we measure store value for both assets. And gold has actually, since 1971, right, when we broke from the gold standard, done very well. It's 40x, right? There's not a lot of other assets that have done that well over that period of time. Now, Bitcoin has done that in the last 2 years, right? 2.5 years. And so when you look at that, what ends up occurring is you're seeing the same symptoms or the same kind of mechanisms of gold and where value accrued and how it grew and why it grew and how it permeated society. You're seeing it in another store of value asset. The difference is gold doesn't get the benefit of the internet, right? The internet gives something much more scalability, can go viral. And I think that the other key piece is money is just a belief system, right? So a medium of exchange is simply valuable because both parties agree, right? So I think when Peter said...
Not real money. You're talking about fiat money. You're talking about a paper currency that governments create out of thin air. There, the value is derived from faith and confidence, but it also has the backing of the government that issued it and the fact that each government demands that its citizens pay taxes in that currency that it creates, which means there is a demand among the citizens to accumulate that currency in order to pay those taxes. And because of that, all of the contracts are denominated in that, employment contracts, rental agreements, bonds, insurance contracts. So everybody starts using it. But ultimately, if the government abuses the privilege of creating it and it creates too much, it collapses in value because the confidence is destroyed. And Bitcoin has much more in common with a fiat currency than it does with gold, because gold's value is derived from its physical properties that make it desirable and make it useful, whereas Bitcoin's value is derived from the confidence that people are going to want it in the future, even though it has no physical properties or any other properties that you could use it for.
Yeah, so Peter, the properties of Bitcoin versus gold is basically gold. You cannot transfer instantly around the world. You have to ship it to the other person if that person decides to want the physical asset in their possession and no one else owning that possession. And we've seen the problems that occur when we have faith in another entity or individuals that are going to be holding that gold asset. We've seen that the government is refusing to hand over other governments' gold, and this is the problem. If you want to be a sovereign, you want to own your assets, it's difficult to own gold because there's a lot of it. It could get stolen. One of the unique properties of Bitcoin is that it cannot be stolen from you if you have it in your head. Also, like gold and like any kind of form of money, if you don't want it, if you feel that let's just say I decide to save in painting, rare art paintings, For example, if I try to sell that rare art painting to you, it's useless. It has no value in that transaction because you know what? I can't sell it to you because you don't want it. I have to sell it to a third party to get some other asset that you want, right? That you're willing to accept for your labor or your goods and services. Now, that's the true with both gold and Bitcoin. If I don't see any value in it, and a lot of people don't see value in gold, they're not going to use it. So that's how I feel about the differences between the properties of gold and Bitcoin.
That is actually going to consummate a transaction is if both he and I believe that asset has value, right? I want the asset, he wants to give me the assets. We both have to buy into the belief that is valuable. But if Peter has gold and I don't want gold, or I don't think gold is valuable, it doesn't matter what the US dollar price is. I'm not going to accept it, so therefore it is worthless in this transaction. By the way, the same thing is true of Bitcoin, right? If one side of the transaction doesn't want Bitcoin, then the Bitcoin in that transaction is worthless, right? You can't use it.
That doesn't matter if you don't want it. I mean, even the GIs after World War II were using cigarettes as money.
Yep.
Even if you didn't smoke, you still knew that other people did. And so if you didn't want to smoke the cigarettes, you knew that there was a market of smokers and you would still accept cigarettes.
But you believed it
in
had
exchange.
value.
But it was not about belief. You know that people smoked them. Right, so gold has value. There's an entire jewelry industry that is built around gold. People want gold in jewelry, but they use it in dentistry. They use it in consumer electronics. Cell phones have gold in them. So we know that there is industrial, there is jewelry, and there is monetary demand. Central banks are big owners of gold. They are buyers of gold. So you know it's there as a reserve asset. So it's not a question of whether or not you think gold has value. It objectively has value because of all the things it is being used for today and all the things it's been used for thousands of years.
Yeah, I agree, Peter. Gold has value other than the monetary unit. Now, I know that you've read about how that money comes into existence because it is valuable in and of itself first and then becomes money. But that hypothesis, I believe, is incorrect. The reason why I think it's incorrect, and I believe it's incorrect, is because money is just a concept, an item that we use as a tool. And who says that as a tool we can't invent a monetary unit into existence that is better than the one that you currently use, which is gold, or actually that you use, but the rest of us, and I think even you do, is the fiat monetary system because we're forced into it. So who's to say we cannot invent something that's better? And I believe we did. Now you're saying that even cigarettes was used as money. Yes, even salt, shells. But why they did not continue as money is because they had problems. Like, for example, salt would dissolve in water. Cigarettes can go bad. Have you ever smoked a stale cigarette, Peter? You probably haven't, but I have. It's horrible. You don't want to smoke that. So those are some of the issues of using other things as money. So when you have a unit of account that is not being used for anything else, can't go bad, can easily be divisible, cannot be defrauded, and everyone knows what it is, and no one can try to cheat you on it. It just makes sense, and be able to send it anywhere in the world. Heck, you could even walk across borders with billions of dollars without anybody saying anything to you, and trying to stop you with that money. Can you imagine a world like that? That is what Bitcoin provides. And it's useful so that you could actually program it. You could add value to it yourself. You could add new features, which I keep telling you about, but you keep forgetting to understand this, that Bitcoin is programmable money. That means you can make other systems on top of it.
You talk about how it's so clunky and cumbersome. I happen to have 50 grams of gold that I had in my wallet. This is the size of a credit card. In fact, it's a debit card, but it's made of gold. It doesn't weigh very much. Here, it's $1,500 at present melt value. don't put that. But it's very easy for people to carry around physical gold. But this particular debit card links to an account that I have. You said you don't use gold on the internet. I have an account in Gold Money, and I have gold in the account. And if I want to spend the gold, if somebody wants it, I can transfer ownership of my gold for free to a merchant, or I can, use this, and I could, go to a ATM machine and liquidate some of my gold and take out the cash, or I can buy something with it.
Wow, Peter. Honestly, I think that's a great idea. I appreciate that method that you've come up with. That really does work. I mean, you can spend your gold again, but the problem is I have to trust that you or somebody in the future running your business is not gonna spend the gold and take away the backing of that gold. Also. Another problem with your gold money card is that certain people qualify and others don't. For example, I do not qualify for your gold money card. When I did try to apply, I was told that because based on regulations, right, the fact that I make money using crypto, that I cannot. Be a customer of yours. Now you've said that it's based on regulation, and I understand that, right? Regulation sucks, right? It holds you back from doing what you want to do, what you should be doing, which is allowing any of your customers to be using your gold money card. But that's the way it is. That's how our governments work, and Bitcoin breaks those chains, those bonds that you're in. And allows people anywhere, of any race, of any color, any type of income stream, anything, own Bitcoins. You might say, well, wait a second, that's bad, criminals own Bitcoins. But you know what? I'd rather have a criminal own Bitcoins than prevent honest people like myself from getting a bank account. That doesn't make any sense, Peter, and that is why Bitcoin is so much more important to us when it comes to a new monetary standard, a new money system that we have to use going forward in the future.
I just get the string of numbers that somehow somebody in the future is actually going to want that and be willing to pay me money for that. I mean, that's what you're trusting.
Let's talk about trust for a second. Peter, you're talking about trust, and you're talking about trust of third-party service providers. And we know from history that whereas this is a capitalistic society, and that there have been some breaches of trust by even the most reputable.
Governed by an algorithm, but it's just software.
Better, that's quicker, that's more reliable, that's more secure than Bitcoin. And if somebody can do that, then it renders Bitcoin worth. The first telephone was not the best telephone. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have value outside that market, right? And you're just
what the physical properties are, and you think that you're going to be able to give it to somebody else in the future, right? And they're going to pay you for it, right? If you want to give it to them.
Well, the gold's had value for thousands of years. There's no reason for it to stop having value. But what you're doing is you're trusting that something that's only had market value for a decade, and it doesn't have value outside that market, right? And you're just having confidence that people are going to want it.
Also, Peter, you think that this gold that you have, right? And I believe that too. That somebody else, you could give it to somebody else, and you'll sell it to somebody else who believes it will have value in the future. So effectively, when gold price goes higher, only because somebody actually wants to buy it to give it to somebody else at a higher price, you also think that this has value and can be transferred to somebody else. Is that correct?
If you want to give it to them.
Well, the gold's had value for thousands of years. There's no reason for it to stop having value. But what you're doing is you're trusting that something that's only had market value for a decade, and it doesn't have value outside that market, right? And you're just having confidence that people are going to want it. And again, what makes no sense is even if you assume, okay, if cryptocurrencies are going to work, I cannot think of an example throughout history where any innovation, where the first one was the best one, right? Wherever it was invented, whether somebody invented the telephone, the first telephone was not the best telephone. It's been improved upon. The first television, the first automobile. So if cryptocurrency would work, why would we assume that Bitcoin is the one that's going to succeed? Why would the first attempt be the best attempt? Why wouldn't somebody come up with something better, that's quicker, that's more reliable, that's more secure than Bitcoin? And if somebody can do that, then it renders Bitcoin worthless because there's something better.
Good question, Peter. I love that question because you know what? People always make that mistake when they get into Bitcoin. When they look at Bitcoin and they go, "Oh, great idea, but let's make something better." That's always a default form position. And the problem with that is because Bitcoin is not just a piece of software. It's more than that. It is a protocol. It's a means of communications between two people. And because it's a means of communication between two people, it doesn't fall into the same category as a physical asset. Because like your car, your phone, technically, right, do we have like a lot of these different types of cars, different types of planes, different types of phones, because we prefer using one type over another. But if a protocol is good enough, right, we will still use it. And on top of that, consider that a protocol can be upgraded. So for example, we have we've used the worst protocol, which was TCP/IP, that was invented way back when. That was we came up with multiple better options than TCP/IP because one, they said it couldn't scale. Two, they said it you couldn't have that many people on it, and yet we have the whole world on the TCP/IP, sending videos and music back and forth. Same has happened with HTTP. Same has happened with SMTP, which is mail protocol. All these protocols are just software, and we still use them, even though there's better methods than what we currently have. Now, the reason why that we use these old methods that, hey, you know what, we can come up with something better, is because it's good enough. It gets a job done, gets what we want, what we're trying to accomplish done. And so Bitcoin, although it's not perfect, it has some flaws, it is being upgraded, it is being fixed, and any other coin, when they, like for example, it's just like saying, hey, you know what, I invented this thing called the assembly line, and then this other guy goes, yeah, well, I've come up with a better method of organizing the assembly line, and I'm like, okay, I'll just copy that. I mean, come on! It's just ridiculous to say that somebody can come up with something better when Bitcoin can just simply copy that process and use it, and that's exactly what it's been doing, because it's been waiting for other cryptocurrencies to try, and for example, different things like Wimble Nimble or Schnorr signatures, and see what happens. And when they collapse, we go, well, we know not to do that. So it's a good thing that we have all these cryptocurrencies trying different things. And so that's where I see what the difference is between a car, phone, seeing Bitcoin being taken over by a new type of invention. It's just not going to happen. Also, Peter, I really think that people are holding Bitcoins for the day when Bitcoin actually becomes money and people actually use it to transact on a day-to-day basis for everything. People do it right now, and I mean, that's why I like Bitcoins, because people use it.
People aren't using Bitcoin as money. They're buying it and they're hoping it goes up.
Holding is a use case, right?
Not really.
With gold,
people are hoping that the price goes up so they can sell, so they can actually buy something.
But isn't that what you're doing with gold when you hold it as a store of value?
No.
What are you
doing? Not doing that at all. I mean, first of all, because we know that over time there's always going to be demand for gold for all of its various uses.
How do we know this?
Well, it's for thousands of years. Why would it stop? I mean, if people could invent something better than gold, they might have already done it, right? So they haven't. But you could try to pick some other commodity that you think is a store of value, but they don't have the properties that gold has that make it likely to store that value. But
Actually, Peter, we have. So, I mean, that's that, man. Oh my God. We have invented the new money, and you just haven't realized it yet. So that's the point. You're not you seem to be missing over and over again.
there may be a fixed supply of Bitcoin, but there's not a fixed supply of alternative cryptocurrencies that may or may not be preferable to Bitcoin. So there's no limit to the number that can be created.
For the purposes of this debate, and because we're limited in time, let's keep the discussion around Bitcoin.
Right, but you
and
can't
gold.
ignore the fact that the properties that Bitcoin has are not unique to any other cryptocurrency that could be created.
Couldn't you say the same about gold
No,
and silver
you can't
and
say
copper
that because
and
silver,
platinum
no,
and titanium and
because silver has different properties than gold, and so does
other
copper.
cryptocurrencies.
Not really. We want to pretend that they do, but since practically speaking, they don't really have different uses because they have no uses other than as a medium of exchange. There is an infinite supply of these cryptos. But to say that...
Does crypto have a use case as a medium of exchange?
But that doesn't count as the use case, right?
Okay.
And the thing is, it's not a good medium of exchange because it's very volatile and it's expensive to transact in, at least Bitcoin.
So I really think that Bitcoin should be in everybody's portfolio, and they don't have to have a lot. Let's just say you have 90K in savings, and Bitcoin happens to go to become the new monetary standard. All you have to do is spend about $250 worth of Bitcoins at today's price, and to have the equivalent of that $90,000 in the future, or even more, is a really good investment, if you ask me, because it's very small percentage, very tiny percentage of your portfolio, and worth the risk. Because hey, you know what? The downside is technically zero, but your upside is tremendous, more like 1,000x. So it makes sense to take that kind of risk, even if it's like a 0.001% of your portfolio, just to see where it goes. Now, what do you think about that, Peter?
When you go back to a portfolio and say, hey, I'm going to put Bitcoin in a portfolio because it's got all this upside, well, you might as well put lottery tickets into your portfolio. I mean, you could hit the winning lottery ticket and it could go up, 1,000 times. I could buy a $2 lottery ticket and win $100 million. But what's the odds? What's the probability of that actually happening? It's a long shot. The idea that Bitcoin is going to go up 100x is a long shot. I mean, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, and when I say I don't think it's going to break a new high, it doesn't mean that it can't. But if I was going to say, what are the probabilities? I think there's probably a better probability that the high is in than not. But there's a realistic probability that Bitcoin will make a new high. But I don't think that the upside in Bitcoin from here is enough to compensate for the downside. The ultimate downside is it zeroes out, right? But so you lose all your money. Well, if you want to make a bet where you may lose all your money, I can think of a lot of other gambles that will probably give you a better risk reward than Bitcoin. And again, when I look at gold too as an asset, I mean, it's a commodity. It's not an asset like stocks because it doesn't pay a dividend. It's not a bond because it doesn't pay interest. It's not real estate because it doesn't collect rent. So gold, when you think about it in a portfolio, it is an alternative to holding cash reserves. So if you think stocks are expensive or bonds are expensive and you want dry powder, but you're also worried about inflation and a weakening currency market, you'll keep that dry powder stored in gold. That makes a lot of sense. But to say I'm going to keep my dry powder in Bitcoin makes no sense whatsoever, because when stocks go down and bonds go down, it's possible that Bitcoin can go down even more.
We all agree that a recession is overdue, and how is Bitcoin going to react during a recession is one of the questions on a lot of investors' minds. I basically agree with many people who think that Bitcoin is a non-correlated asset. I agree with that position because Bitcoin is something different and new. It's not part of our current financial system fully yet. Yes, there are parts the foot is in the door with the CME contracts and so forth, but it's not fully in the door. So that makes it an interesting asset because now you have something that you can move your large sums of money to and actually own it directly. And no one can say that, no one can take that from you. No bank can say, hey, you know what, we're going out of business and you know what, all those Bitcoins that you have, well, we have to take that as well. So what could happen in a major financial crisis, which you predicted, Peter, is that your stocks are confiscated, your bonds are confiscated, your money markets are confiscated. So with Bitcoins, you don't have that risk. You don't have that third party risk, which most of our financial system is built on. You know that we have like tremendous amount of derivatives, and derivatives are basically just third party contracts promising to bet on something, to bet on gold going out, to bet on the bonds going higher, to bet on bonds going lower, to bet all kinds of crazy things, and even bets on top of bets. It's insane. And so now we have this asset that everyone can move into, and there's no third party problem with that person saying, hey, you know what, I don't have the money, the assets or whatever that you've stored with my in my custody. So this is a huge deal, and I think a lot of smart investors are going to see, hey, you know what, we should move into Bitcoins because there's no third-party accountability, that we have third-party liabilities that we have to worry about.
My argument is not gold is bad, right? I actually think that gold, for me, Bitcoin is still more efficient to move, right?
Right, but the difference is when you're moving gold, you're moving something. When you're moving Bitcoin, you're moving nothing. Obviously, to move nothing doesn't take a lot of effort.
So forget about Bitcoin for a second. Would you argue that digital assets in general have no value, that there's nothing there?
But when you mean a digital asset, if you mean the 2,000 whatever cryptocurrencies, I don't think they have any value.
Okay, we all know that gold is very difficult to move, right? Even if you're the best shipper, you can't ship this thing across the world very easily when you're talking in large sums of money. That you have to agree with that Bitcoin is a lot more efficient to move, right, Peter?
Right, but the difference is when you're moving gold, you're moving something. When you're moving Bitcoin, you're moving nothing. Obviously, to move nothing doesn't take a lot of effort.
You're saying that Bitcoin is nothing, and the fact that you cannot see that that your when you write into a ledger that I own gold, that document that you've written in is nothing, and you could take away that gold and point to the document and say, hey, Davinci, you've got this much gold supposedly, and I can move it around to anybody. And then moving that ledger around is very, very efficient. Moving the money around that ledger is very efficient, but you're not moving anything, and that's exactly what will eventually happen when we try to put our faith into somebody else with backing of gold, and that's a big problem. You can't trust the third party 100% of the time. Sure, I trust you, Peter, but I don't know. I don't trust the future Peter or running your company that's going to have that gold there. So that's the problem, really. Really, you are trading something. You're trading the fact that when you're trading Bitcoins, you're trading the fact that this is a scarce commodity, and you're trading something there. So that's that. So Peter, I want you to try to convince me that there's no value in Bitcoin and that we should only be using gold and silver as our means of money.
This time, Peter, you can go first.
Well, I've had a lot of experience talking with Bitcoiners or Bitcoin bugs, and to me, it's almost like a religion at this point. I mean, the people who believe in it are going to believe in it no matter what I say. Right? And it's like I can't convince somebody who's Catholic that they should be Jewish. They've been brought up on a particular religion, and that's what they believe. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people in Bitcoin fall into that. And I think what's really clouding their judgment is their own greed. Because if people are right about what's going to happen to Bitcoin, all the people who own it are going to be really rich. And that's a dream that people don't want to let go of, right? They want that to happen. And so they build up a wall to prevent, any kind of rational argument from penetrating it, because they don't want that worldview disrupted. They want to believe that they can get rich. Just like people wanted to believe they can get rich owning a home during the housing bubble or during the dot-com bubble. It's very powerful when you combine sometimes ignorance with greed and a little bit of knowledge. I mean, I'm not saying that people in crypto are foolish, because they actually believe a lot of things in some cases that are right. But then they got sidetracked by their own greed, and once they get into this thing, they can't seem to let it go. So it's difficult for people to take a step back. And when you live in a bubble, you can't see the bubble.
Peter, your time's up.
Okay, well, I have to say that Peter, there are some points there where we might think that we are living in a bubble and we don't see it. Also, that we're looking at the fact that we're going to be rich one day. Yes, I completely agree. We are looking at the fact that we're going to be super rich one day, because we've seen a piece of the reason why we believe that is we've seen a piece of technology that has revolutionized banking and money for right now and for the foreseeable future. This is what we see. What could derail that particular vision? Yes. Is it possible that the vision be derailed? Yes, it is. How so? One way is that all governments and stuff like that band together and say nobody's allowed to use Bitcoin. Anybody caught mining it is death penalty. Do you think what are the odds of that happening? Very low. Okay, so if they're not going to do that, what are the other risks you have? You have the risk that the SHA-256 and PGP encryption, right? This is the SHA-256, the hashing, but we won't get into that. Both of them have to fail at the same time, and then Bitcoin goes to zero, because anyone could take anyone's Bitcoins. Now, what are the odds of both those encryption methods failing at the exact same time? Pretty much zero. So with that being said, we have a high probability that this is going to be successful. And we see the use case that you do not. That use case is that I have a monetary system that no one can stop me from using. No one can say, hey, you know what, Davinci, I know you bought something on the internet, but you know what, I don't think you really wanted to buy that. We're gonna block your credit card here, and you can't buy that. Or my favorite is that, you know what, you want to buy that expensive house, you got to show me where you got that money and how you got that money, and maybe I might let you bring that money here to pay for that house. Maybe if I feel like it. I mean, this is what I have to go through with our current monetary system, and it's ridiculous. This has to end, and Bitcoin will end it. Thank you very much for watching this debate with Peter Schiff. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Bye for now.